Hey guys, it's Tuneable here. This video is about a placement script that I wrote and how you can use it in your game, but first and foremost, I want to apologize for the inactivity that's plagued Tuning Studios for the past few months or so. It's been a multitude of reasons, computer issues, lack of motivation, that sort of thing. You guys get it. But I'm doing better now. I'm coming back, and I'm looking to update things. So speaking of which, Mining Madness has been updated in a very long time. It's been on the back burner a while in favor of Mecha Cubes, So I'm releasing an update for it, a Halloween event, probably on Halloween day or the day before. The event will obviously last much longer than Halloween, so I guess you guys can look forward to that. So let's get to the actual topic of the video now. So I actually wrote a placement script, due to popular demand. A lot of people want to make Sandbox Tycoons and all, and they have basic scripting knowledge for the management aspects of the game, but not so much the math and expertise required to build a functional placement system, that's fancy and smooth and basically looks professional. So yeah, you need to understand about this tutorial here. This is intended for people who do know the basics of scripting. You need to know some things. This won't write you a whole Sandbox Tycoon. This is just for the placement script. So if you don't know how to do any other aspects of it, I recommend you look at the wiki, or you can post in the comments, help each other out, something like that. So anyway, let's get started in here. So I've actually just created a sample place here. I've got just some Mining Madness items I decided to paste in. Nothing special about them, So that brings me to the first thing you need to know about this. So you're going to need the placement module. All right. It's a module script, It has all the documentation in here in case you missed something in the video, but some of the documentation is kind of vague, so that's the purpose for this video in the first place. So you're going to need that placement module. Link in the description, obviously. So let's just get on started here. We're going to go over to Starter GUI, and we're just going to create a screen GUI and put a script in it. And if anyone posts in the comments telling me it's GUI, I'm done. I call it GUI. So let's call this placement or something, doesn't really matter. And we'll just plop the placement module right in here. So just to get started with this thing, we're going to go ahead and require the module, which is basically like running the module and receiving whatever it is it spits back. You can go to the Roblox wiki, ask in the comments anywhere pretty much to find out more about modules and their functionality. So we're just going to say local placement handler equals require script for child placement module. So all this is doing, we're just going to require the module. And so we're also going to create a plane. But actually, before we do that, I need to address some things here. First, we're going to need to have three things in order to actually activate this, all right? We're going to need a base plate, which I have right over here in my little sample place. And this thing is going to designate where we place our item at. It needs to be unrotated, and it needs to, its size needs to correspond with your grid size. So if your grid size is 3 studs, then its X and Z size over here, they need to be multiples of that. Otherwise, you're going to have rounding issues, and basically the script will get confused. So my grid size personally is going to be 3. And if you're wondering grid size, that's basically just how that just describes how the item's going to snap to the grid. Most Sandbox Tycoons use a grid size of 3, so that's just what I'm going to be going with here. So we've got our base plate, we've got our grid size, but we're also going to need a model that just kind of shows where all of our items currently on the base are. So that right here, I just have a model right over here called item holder, and that's what that's going to do. So first of all, we're just going to go ahead and plop these items into replicated storage, because these are the items we're going to be placing here. These are going to be our item templates. So let's go right back to our script. Let's just get a reference going to our items as well. Should just come in handy. And now we're actually going to call the function new on the placement handler to get something usable out of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do placement handler dot new. And what we're going to put here is, first of all, our base plate. So that's our base over here. So let's just go ahead and create a variable for that as well. So base.baseplate. And we're also going to need our items inside of it. So that's going to be base.itemHolder. That's where we're going to be parenting all the items that we end up placing. And we're also going to need grid size, which we're just going to set to 3, like I said before. So this is the basics of it, but we actually, this isn't going to do anything right now. This is just basically initializing. We're just getting everything set up for use in the future. So you might be wondering, how do we actually make use of this? Well, what we're going to do right now is we're just going to designate an item that we're going to try out, for testing purposes. And a little later on, Wada would actually choose which item we want to place. But for now, we'll just do futuristic furnace. So that's right here. And we'll just make a function called initiate placement. Item name. Okay. Actually, yeah, let's just get rid of this. And what we'll do, just for testing purposes right now, we're not going to hook up interface or anything to it yet. We're just going to have our initiate placement function here. And so it basically is in the name. What we're going to do, we're going to start placement. But if you use the word initiate, you sound really smart. So scripting pro tip right there, use big words. Yeah, that's a joke. Don't use words you know the meaning to. All right. So first things first, we need to understand something about this placement module. And that is that there's really only a few requirements for models to use it. First of all, they should probably be anchored. I don't know why you would try to be moving around a model that's not anchored. You don't want it interacting with physics while you're trying to place it. Second of all, it needs to have a primary part that describes what it collides with. So for futuristic furnace, for example, we have an invisible part right here called hitbox that describes its size, the item size, and like where it'll hit other objects and all. This is where it'll snap to the grid with. This is what it'll designate what's colliding and what isn't. And this is the primary part of the model. So make sure you set primary part of each of your models. All right, so yeah, so we've gotten the requirements of the model down, but what we need to do is we actually need to create like a fake model for it, local dummy model, because we don't want to be actually be using the object that we're going to place, because we're using filtering enabled here, and we're just going to kind of like create a dummy model that's just going to be transparent and everything. And by doing that, we can edit some of its properties without necessarily affecting the item itself, if that makes any sense to you guys. So we're just going to say dummy model equals items, item name, clone. And we're probably going to want to do some basic property changes for this as well. For example, you probably don't want your player to intersect with it. So we're just going to do a basic loop through here. This is more of supplementary material right here. Basically, we're just saying if it is a part, then set its collisions off, because we don't want that. That would be irritating to be like glitching around and everything. And so after we do that, we also need to put it somewhere so we can actually see it. The placement module might actually do that. Can't really remember. It doesn't matter though. So we're just going to set that to workspace. It really doesn't matter. The placement module will clean up the model, I believe. So yeah. So then what we're going to do here is we are going to enable placement. So the procedure here, it's pretty simple. Plain enable, and then put your model in. And it's really as simple as that to start off your placement. So we'll just go over here and try it out. And here we go. So we've got some very basic placement going. Seems to be working well. There is rotation here, but you probably can't see it because obviously this thing is symmetrical completely. So now that we've got our basic placement down, let's start adding some properties in here and actually find a way to use this. So let's just go back right in here. So first of all, you'll notice that this thing isn't actually placing anything because that's not covered in the functionality of this placement module. And I know that probably sounds really stupid, But the whole purpose here is for this to be as flexible as possible with your game, and it really only requires a few lines of code to place things in the first place. So what we're actually going to do, we're gonna set up a few things right now. Actually, we need to make sure that there isn't placement active whenever we start something. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do cancel placement because we need to turn off placement. So if dummy model, and that's how we're going to mark if started yet. And we're also, yeah, okay. So if dummy model, then dummy model destroy, dummy model equals nil, and plain disable. So it's pretty simple. That's all there is to it, to canceling placement here. And yeah, that's what we're gonna do here. So local. So okay, so the next thing we're gonna get into, and this is pretty important, is that, so like I said, we're not actually doing anything with this yet. Like we're able to move it around, but we don't know where the user is placing it. You know, we don't get any indication of when the user is clicking to place the item. And there's actually a pretty cool functionality that's built in here for that. So this thing here actually has a return value, which is a signal. And if you're unfamiliar with what that means, when you do something like part.touch connect function hit, for example, this right here, part.touch, that returns a signal object. And that's what you connect a function to run this whenever the part's touched. So it's the same concept here. This thing returns a signal, and using that signal, so local signal, we're going to want to keep a variable of this, because why not? So what we can do with this, it's the same concept, remember, as just a regular event. So whenever something happens, this marks whenever the object is placed, connect. And so what this is going to be is this going to be location and model. Okay, so what does it mean by model? This is just basically the dummy model. We already have this, but it's there just in case we need it. So what do we want to do with this? So we're going to need to, so this is a filtering enabled game. So we're not just going to go like set primary part C frame and just move a model wherever we want. We can't do that. So what we're actually going to do here is we need to set up a server script. So we're going to go over to server script service. I'm going to create a script. We're just going to say placement. Yeah, we'll just call it server placement, just so we don't get confused. And how about we name this one client placement? So what we need to do here is basically the way you, like, I kind of expect people to already know this, but the way that the server interacts with the clients and vice versa through the Lua API is a remote event or a remote function. In this case, we're just going to use a remote event for the sake of simplicity. So we're just going to call that client placed. And so how this will work is that whenever the client chooses to place an object, it's going to send this right over to, it's going to send it to the server through this event, and the server is actually going to place the item. Because that way, it's completely secure. You know, we do all of the important logic checks on the server so that user can't use cheat engine or something to hack it. So what we're going to do here in the server, let's just say game service replicated storage client place on client event connect function layer item name and location. So we've got the server end of this set up over here. Let's just go get the client end set up real quick. So we should probably get a name going for what's currently being placed. Just kind of forgot to do that, honestly. So current item name, sure. You can ignore the stupid variable names right now. So item name. We could technically get the model name, but I prefer not to do that just for the sake of cleanliness. Plus we might change the model name or it might get altered. So anyhow, what we're going to do with this is, first of all, when the user places, we don't want them to just continue placing, at least until the server processes it. So we want to cancel placement. So we've already got that function set up, and that was the purpose for it. So we've got that done already. And we're also going to add that up here too, just because if the user's already placing something, then we don't want it to like try to overwrite it, you know? Like we don't want a collision to occur or anything, so we're just going to cancel placement up here as well. And if placement is actually happening, this will detect it and it'll stop it. So we'll have to say this too. Current item name. And then so what we're going to do here is we are going to send the location and the item name to the server because that's the item that we want to place and that's the place we want to put it. And so then the server can process that on its own. So we will do game.getService replicated storage dot client placed fire server. And we're going to do item name, so that's current item name, and we're going to do location. So that would be location. So actually, something I forgot to check here. Model.parent, just in case it gets destroyed by anything else. And yeah, whatever, that works. Okay, so here we go. We're sending this off to the server right now, and we're canceling our placement. So the server has received this information. It says the player wants to place this item, and they have a location to put it. Now, ideally, when you're writing your own Tycoon, you're going to check their inventory if they have enough of the item, and if they do, you're going to pop that item out of their inventory and put it on the base, you know? I'm not really too concerned about the inventory because I'm sure you guys can handle that on your own, and it's out of this scope of this tutorial. So we're just going to be focusing specifically on the item itself. So let's just say local items. I don't even know why I'm bothering with the variables, to be honest. But, and so what we'll do, say local item equals items, find first child item name, and if item then. So we want to check this actually exists, hence the reason why I used find first child, because the client could send anything they wanted here, you know? Their item name could be banana, and the server would have no way of knowing. So just for the sake of security, we're gonna check that it actually exists first, you know? So yeah. So item, we'll call this item template too, because this isn't the item that we're actually gonna be placing. This is just what we're gonna base the item off of. So we're actually gonna clone the item because we want a new one. We're gonna go ahead and put it in our base, which is right over here. Workspace.base.item holder. And like I mentioned before, we need to have a container that has all of the items in it so that we can properly detect collision between each of them. So we're just gonna, you know, use item holder. I've already got that set up. Again, when you're making your own, you're probably gonna have like some logic to detect which base, but for now I just have one base. And it's very simple. Like I said, literally one line of code, item set primary part C frame location. And that should do it for this. So we're just gonna try that out. We might have messed something up along the way, so if so, we'll fix that up as well. But I forgot to parent it. Workspace.base item holder. Okay, this should be on server event. My bad. That's like and ask any programmer, they'll say that. It's really vague what that actually means. So, yeah. All right, and here we go. We've got our item placed down. It's placed in the appropriate spot. Futuristic furnace, cool. So we're basically almost done here. All I really am gonna bother doing right now is let's just add a text box. All right, and what we'll do is we'll have the player, they can just enter in the name of an item and press the go button and it'll start placing that item. It's a real simple little thing to do, but it'd be great for the player. So I'm not really gonna go too into depth about what I'm doing here with this. It's literally it's like pretty simple, I feel like. We need to actually show the GUI here too. Like I said, GUI design is out of the scope of this tutorial, so we're just gonna set it up real quick, make it look like half decent. Okay, that does not look half decent. I'm sorry. I am trying my best. We'll do the classic Mining Madness gray theme. That's what we'll do. Everybody loves the Mining Madness gray theme. Oh, beautiful. I'll make it darker too, because that just really blends in. Perfect. All right. We'll just put it over to the left. Just bump this over. And let's just go ahead and create a button as well. Actually, nah, we can just press enter. I forgot about that. So what we'll do, so local text box equals script.parent wait for child text box. So we're just going to create a variable for our textbook just for the sake of cleanliness, as always. Text box focus lost connect function enter pressed. Like I said, I don't really want to go too into detail about what this does because it really isn't too important for the understanding of this. I'm just putting this here as like proof of the functionality. So we're just going to check the text of the text box because we want the user to input something here. So we're going to say if items find first child text box.text. So what we're doing is we're checking all of our items in here and we're seeing if the item name that they put in is actually the real one. It's actually like exists as an item in the game. If it doesn't, then we have nothing to place and we'd probably get an error. So we're gonna actually just check that it exists first of all. And we'll make a variable for that just so we don't have to keep typing it out. Text. And if the item actually exists, then let's start placing the item. And we'll just check that out. Hopefully I got my API right here because I have not messed with text boxes in a while. So let's just do futuristic furnace. Cool. So here we are. We're going to place that down. Let's try another item. It says another item, puts the same item. So here we go. We can see collision is definitely working. So that's good. Let's try out a different item then. Rock upgrader. Cool, so it works just fine. I think that's all I really need to cover in this tutorial. The rest is really up to you. So you need a lot of other features, obviously, to make your own Sandbox Tycoon. And so, yeah, you're gonna need a lot more than this, but this should be the most advanced aspect of a Sandbox Tycoon. Probably, you know, for like a Mining Madness or Miner's Haven type of Sandbox Tycoon, this is probably the most complex feature involved. You can find like the item scripts and everything for a standard dropper, all in free models, you know. So really just using this, you know, using some basic scripting, you'll be well on your way to making a Tycoon. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I don't really do tutorials. This is the first tutorial I've ever done. I know I could definitely be a bit more clear on things, but yeah, just let me know what you thought about this. If you guys like this sort of thing, then I can try basic scripting tutorials. But honestly, there are just millions of scripting tutorials, so I'm really debating it right now. But yeah, if you like this sort of thing, let me know. I can keep making useful little models, plugins, that sort of thing for the community. And yeah, so that's all. Tuning us out.